Coming up on Unpacked.
Happy family, you wouldn't say that our family was broken. He called again, and that's where he said his last goodbyes again to my aunt. In the background, my aunt could hear the kids screaming and my mom screaming. It's something that no 12-year-old or any person should experience.
Imagine losing your entire family in one tragic accident, and that accident is caused by someone that you love. Today's guest is here to share her story. Let's unpack. It was the summer of 1999, and 12-year-old Alicia Ramdharee was on holiday in Johannesburg, whilst her siblings and parents were in Durban. It was also in that very summer, on the 11th of December, that the news of the death of her mother, sister, brother, and father would change her entire life. This is part one of Alicia's story. Let's unpack. Alicia, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here today.
So talk to me about what your family structure was like when you were young, your earliest memories and what that was like.
Earliest memories would be us going for picnics. We were a family of 5. Mm-hmm. I had younger siblings, age 3 and 8.
And you were how old at the time?
I was 12 years old. And we would always go together as a family. Wherever we went, there was no such thing as you stay behind and we go. Dad always took us together. And
the household had mom and dad?
Yes, household had mom and dad. We lived together. Happy family. Always did things together. Mom loved baking and cooking. Dad also, he made excellent biryanis and curries and scones on the weekend. You'd wake up to this beautiful smell on the weekend. And our relationship was good. You wouldn't say that our family was broken or there was anything in between.
Yes.
And Dad did stage decors, so we would tag along on weekends, or if he had free time, we would go to the flea market and sell those little polystyrene cutouts. And, oh gosh.
Yeah. So what were your siblings like?
My siblings were naughty, as are all siblings. We were fond of each other, but as siblings, we always had our normal arguments and fights here and there. We did get up to mischief, which caused our parents to give us a spank here and there.
Yes.
One very fond memory is of my sister and I spraying Mr. Min on the tiles.
Yes.
And we lived in Durban, so, the school clothing at that time was white. So it's white socks, white school dresses. So we took it upon ourselves to put white socks on. And with the Mr. Min on the floor, we slid on it. Up, down, until Mom came in and she's like, no. Now you're washing those socks because now the socks are nice and brown.
Yes.
So we did get up to mischief. We had a good time. My sister, though, was very sickly.
And was your sister the younger of the siblings?
No, she was the middle, and my baby brother was the youngest.
Yes.
Yeah. We just made, we had the best time as siblings. We played outside, we had our tea parties. My baby brother enjoyed joining in on our tea parties. He was always curious as to why these little tea parties are held with these tea sets. And we had a good childhood. My sister started school the same year that I went into grade 7.
Yeah.
At that time, it was standard 5. So she was in pre-primary. And she did a disappearing act on me.
Oh.
That wasn't good because I thought I'd lost her.
Yes.
Only to find out that she's busy sitting in Dad's computer room, playing games, and I was bawling my eyes out because I thought that lost her, she's
Yeah.
lost somewhere and someone kidnapped her. So, yeah.
Yes. So take us back to the events leading up to that fateful day and where you were and what was happening with the family.
I was actually in Johannesburg at the time of the incident. The incident took place in Durban. My youngest aunt got married that November, so we were all up in Johannesburg as a family to attend the wedding. And I'm not sure what transpired at that time, but my dad decided that I should stay behind in Johannesburg and the rest of the family, which is himself, mom, and my siblings go back to Durban.
Yes.
And the scene looked like it was something out of the movie the day that they left for Durban, because my siblings cried so much to stay with me, and my dad just literally picked them up and shoved them into the car.
Yeah.
And he questioned me, why do I need to stay in Johannesburg? I mean, Dad never allowed us to go anywhere alone. Like I said, we went together as a family. And this was the first time that I was away from them. I spoke to my mom, I think it was a week before the incident. She called to tell me that I got my grade 7 results and I'll be going to grade 8. I was really excited because she promised me a gold bracelet with charms on.
Yes.
And I was really excited. They bought the kids Christmas presents and, just that festivities. It made me want to go back home. And a week later, while I was staying with my aunt, they planned a holiday to go camping. I've never been camping, so it was something, exciting for me to explore. And I mean, at the age of 12, you still want to see things and experience things. And on the 11th of December, that morning, we received a call from my dad to say that my aunt should say her last words to her sister. I was actually confused at that point because that's my dad. He wouldn't do such a thing. He wouldn't call to say that. And the entire...
Were you in the room with your aunt when that call came in?
Yes. And due to this call, we had to cancel. And she took a drive, and I was told to stay by the landline until her brother contacts us because the police at that time needed permission to break down the doors and stuff.
Because the phone call specifically said, say your last words. Was that all he said, as in say your last words to your sister?
Yes. That was the only thing that he said. And this created panic amongst all of us because we weren't sure what the situation was. And I was obviously left in the dark.
Being a child.
Yes. So the adults protected me from, or saved me from hearing whatever was going on, the actual story itself. So I stayed at the phone, and it was around 10 to 3 on the 11th of December where he called again, and that's where he said his last goodbyes again to my aunt. I took a walk outside.
So he called a second time?
Yes.
And what did he say? I'm saying goodbye.
It was just say goodbye, and in the background, my aunt could hear the kids screaming and my mom screaming. And at this point, I decided, okay, let me just take a break, go outside and have a breather because whatever's going on inside is really not my dad. This is not my family. And time went by, and I went back into the house, and I just remember hearing people crying. And I thought to myself, what is going on? As I walked to my aunt's bedroom, she just blurted out that your dad has just killed your mom, your brother, sister, and himself.
And how did you take those words when she said them, you being your 12-year-old self?
I was shocked. I started crying. I remember saying the following, I want my mommy now. I want my mommy now. And it was just something so unrealistic at that point because, I mean, that's my dad.
Yes.
He cannot do something like that. He cannot take the only people that I know that love me away from me. And I managed to tell myself, you know what, it's probably a joke. This isn't your dad. This did not happen. It's probably just a joke because you need to go back home to Durban. You passed your exams. You're going to grade 8. Maybe it's just a prank. So when we go down to Durban, we'll see what the case is. We left that night. We reached in the early morning hours of the 12th, I think it was.
So you drove down?
Yes, we all drove down. And we had to gather family members on the way. Remember, at that point, cell phones were still a new thing. So
Yes.
my grandmother was asleep. We tried to get her on the landline, and the phone was off the hook. This was my maternal grandmother. And we all just decided as a family to go down to Durban. And on arrival, it was dead. Dead.
What do you mean?
Walking down, I'm not sure if you know the Chatsworth houses. They have these steep staircases. And as you walk down, it was just this silence and you're sobbing. And you're not greeted in the way that you are normally greeted with siblings running out to hug you, your mom there to kiss you.
Take your time. Take your time.
Your dad not there to give you that big hug. And you get taken into the house. You smell the incense sticks burning. And you see the white cloth on the floor. As per our culture, you need to have a white cloth. And the bodies come home and lay on that white cloth. I realized then this could actually be true. That this incident did take place. I was accompanied by a few people to go upstairs and look for important documents. Documents that I never knew what it was. An ID document, a marriage certificate. I never knew of these things as a 12-year-old and where they were kept. And as I got upstairs, I was taken into the main bedroom first. And that's where my mom and my brother were shot. Their bodies were already gone to the morgue. So these were just blood stains that were there.
So just as a question at that point, when you guys arrived at the house, had other family already made arrangements? Or were you arriving to no one there? Like, what had actually taken place before you arrived that the bodies were already taken?
Well, my uncle managed to gain access into the house with the police. And he's the one that called to tell us that they are no longer. In that time, he arranged for the bodies to be removed and the remainder of the family is called to start making the funeral arrangements and whatever needed to be sorted out. I was left out of that entire process. I guess all the adults grouped together and as a family sorted out what needed to be sorted out for the day's proceeding.
So basically, in essence, your experience of it was leaving Joburg that this is a joke, this is a prank, it can't be real. There's no conversations on the road. You arrive there to the reality that actually this is true. They've taken you up to the room to look for documents. Describe what that room looked like where, they were killed.
The main bedroom, obviously they had covered the blood stains so that you don't see those. But I was told that my mom was shot first with a pillow covered over her head. And on the floor, they found my brother in a fetal position with his hand over his head.
And where was he shot?
Also in the head. And we walked to my bedroom. That is where my sister and I shared a single bed. There were two single beds in that room. In that room was my sister. She was shot on my bed, also in the head. And my dad shot himself on my sister's bed. And while I was in that room, it still didn't sink in that it's real. Even though I've seen the blood stains and I've seen the white cloth, it wasn't something for me to take in at that moment. I remember pulling the curtain off one of the beds and I just saw it drenched in blood. I fainted and was carried out of the house. And I told myself that's probably tomato sauce. It's not blood. The next step for me would be to see their bodies the next day at the funeral. Maybe that will help me to realize that this is true. It did happen. I don't know why I kept on making up these things. It's like I just didn't want to believe that this is real. It was one of the first stages of grief, and that's denial, that they are gone. I needed some sort of proof that it did happen. So the next day on the funeral, when I saw their 4 bodies in their coffins, I realized that it is what it is. I had to say goodbye to the 4 important things in my life. And it's something that no 12-year-old or any person should experience.
When, they had sent you up to the room to look for documents, did you end up finding what you were looking for, or it was then that you fainted and they took you out and you didn't go back to doing that?
No, I didn't find what I was looking for. I never knew what an ID document looked like. My parents always kept these documents away from us. It's important documentation. But it's also so important to let us know where these things are kept so that when something of this sort happens, you know where to find these documents. I wasn't able to find it that day. And after fainting, I never entered the house until the next day.
So where did you spend that night, and was it with your aunt?
The night I spent at my uncle's home. And I think it was the days preceding as well, because our house was really out of bounds for anyone to sleep in. So I spent the night with family. It was at my uncle's house. I remember in the morning his wife giving me a bath and getting me dressed. They presented me with the belongings that they found on my parents' and siblings' bodies. An item that stuck out to me was those signet rings. I had worn it in a competition, and before I could leave Durban, I gave it to my dad. And I told him to keep it on and not to take it off. And he didn't take it off because that was one of the items that was still on his finger when he passed away. But I held on to his glasses. It had a bit of blood on it, but it didn't bother me in the least. It was just something for me to hold on to say, okay, this could calm you down. It's something that, you know, even though it's an object, but it's something.
That connects you to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I kept that all the way through the entire funeral procession until it was taken away from me when I think one of the elders saw that there's still blood stains on it.
In terms of when you were that night at your uncle's place and, you know, your aunt got you ready, did anybody have a conversation with you to say, you know, this is what has happened? Because in all that time, you were experiencing it in moments, but did somebody actually sit you down and tell you what happened?
No, that did not happen. It was just bath, change, get into bed, get ready for the next day. There was no such thing as sitting me down and talking me through what had just happened. Nothing of that sort took place. It was, for me, go figure and put together your own pieces of the puzzle.
Did anybody explain to you to say, so this is what needs to happen going forward? This is what's going to be, you know, required of you? Any of that type of conversation, or was it just winging it?
The conversation that I do remember having was that all our belongings in our home will have to be donated because obviously we couldn't cart everything to Johannesburg. So that was a decision that was made, and I need to pack up and pack my things. And the rest, it was winged. It's adults that made decisions, and I just had to go with the flow.
So you went to the funeral parlor to go and see the bodies. Were you told this is what's going to be happening? You're going to be seeing the bodies, or it was just get dressed, we're going, and there you go?
I didn't actually go to the funeral parlor. The bodies come home to where the dead have lived, and that's where I saw their bodies, and that was it. It was a lot of crying and consoling, but nothing of telling me exactly what had taken place on that specific day. What had happened for my dad to do what he did. I wish that someone did tell me from day one, this is what was happening. This is why your dad did what he did. And I'm sure it would have given me a clearer view of everything. But it was not done.
What was your understanding at that point of what had happened? Was it already your understanding that we are here because of something my father did?
My understanding was that it was because of me. I blame myself for that because my dad just left me in Johannesburg, and he told my aunt, or my aunt told me at that point, your dad left you here because you have a big mouth and we need to straighten you up.
That's what you were told?
Yes. And that's what I believed. Okay, if I was here to be straightened up in Johannesburg and dad did this in Durban, then maybe he didn't want me, or I've been naughty, or, you know, as a 12-year-old that Dad took his life and took my siblings and my mom with.
So what happened on the day of, the send-off?
After the arrival of the bodies at home, we proceeded to the school where my dad taught. And it was in a very open area where they would have their assemblies and the students will line up. I remember walking in and all the students stood up and they're all almost in sync, I could feel what they were feeling because my dad was their teacher, and a lot of them were also fond of him. He played that fatherly figure towards them as well. We had their bodies kept in one of the corridors where the students were actually allowed to come around and say their goodbyes. I remember myself trying to wake my father up. I sat at his bedside and I kept on trying to wake him up. Dad, wake up. It's Alicia. Wake up. And still the questions, why? Why me? Why did this have to happen? Was I so bad that this had to happen? And I remember us driving to the crematorium, and as they laid their bodies onto the belt, I knew that was the last time I would see them.
Next time on Unpacked.
At night, I would cry myself to sleep. I took a razor blade and I started slitting myself. You sent your parents to their deathbed. We would rather have your siblings here than you. I just said, enough is enough. It's time to love me and put me first. Regardless of what my dad did, he's still my dad.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mamoja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming and don't forget to subscribe.